Good morning, everybody. I'm Sabrina Rossi of Agence France Presse, and I would like to introduce you for this panel Marc Mézard, who is a physicist and academic administrator and the director of École Normale Supérieure de Paris. And I hope that you heard me because the micro was a little bit far. So again, good morning everybody for this session of the artificial intelligence. Someone is connected? Maybe Mr. Russo? Yes, I see. Ruffo, sorry.
Okay, so it's a real pleasure to introduce Stefano Ruffo, the director of CISA and also a theoretical physicist. And it's a great pleasure to introduce Marc. Marc Mézard is a theoretical physicist active in the field of statistical mechanics. And since 2012 is the director of École Normale Supérieure in Paris, and more recently, president of Paris Sciences et Lettres, which, as the website says, covers all fields of knowledge and creativity. So a very broad spirit. And this PSL University was ranked first among French universities in Times Higher Education. And recently, it was really a tremendous success. She top ranked in the prestigious Shanghai ranking. Known worldwide for his results in the study of disordered systems, he began his postdoctoral career in Rome, collaborating with Giorgio Parisi on the problem of the so-called spin glass, which has proved to be a suitable model not only for understanding certain properties of magnetic materials, but also as a paradigm for understanding problems at the border between physics, biology, and information theory. Precisely for his studies in this revolutionary research field, he received, together with Giorgio Parisi of Rome Sapienza and Riccardo Zecchina, who is now at Bocconi, Milan, the Larson Sager Prize of the American Physical Society. I cite the motivation for innovative studies that apply to the spin glass model to computational problems, producing both new classes of efficient algorithms and the new perspectives in the study of phase transitions in the structural complexity. With a hint of pride, as the director of CISA, I can point out that Marc is the scientific director of one of the electronic journals published by CISA, Journal of Statistical Mechanics, Theory and Experiment. Marc also combines his commitment as a researcher with a strong sensitivity to social and political problems. I would like to recall his commitment for the establishment of professorships for asylum-seeking scientists, which inspired me to launch such initiatives in our region. So I give the floor to Marc.
Thank you very much, Stefano. Thank you for inviting me also to give this talk. I'm sorry I cannot be present, but we have to cope with the current constraints. And I'm happy to talk about artificial intelligence. I want to introduce you to what are the progress and what impact it can have, one can imagine as impact for the future of society. I will start with a few statements. There are no lack of big statements, of strong statements about artificial intelligence. I call them myths. And here is the first one by Ray Kurzweil, who has won the National Medal of Technology, MIT Elementary Prize. What's actually happening is machines are powering all of us. They may not yet be inside our bodies, but by the 2030s, We will connect our neocortex, the part of our brain where we do our thinking, to the cloud. We are going to get more neocortex, we are going to be funnier, we are going to be better at music, we are going to be sexier. So you see that this is an extremely optimistic point of view. I don't really share it, but I think it's interesting to have this point of view from a very educated person. I will now go to a next point of view, which makes the balance, by Elon Musk, the well-known CEO of Tesla. AI is a fundamental existential risk for human civilization, in a way that car accidents, airplane crashes, faulty drugs, or bad food were not. They were harmful to a set of individuals in society, but they were not harmful to society as a whole. So here are really the two pillars, the two extremes of the opinions about AI. But let us focus on AI now. Why do we talk about AI now, considering that it has been around for 70 years? It's probably fair to say that artificial intelligence was kind of stalled at the end of the 20th century. There was not much progress that was being done. And there has been a new era, which has been starting at a very well-defined date. Actually, it's 2012. In 2012, there was a big breakthrough of artificial intelligence using devices that had been around for some time, but which were brought to a level in which they could really make a big breakthrough. These are called deep networks, and I will explain them in a few words later on in this talk. And the breakthrough was done on some competition about analyzing and classifying images. So in 2012, there come these new programs, these new computer programs based on deep networks, and they make an enormous difference with all the previous methods in analyzing images. And probably the whole field of image understanding, detection, segmentation, recognition, etc., has been the one that has benefited the most from all this progress of artificial intelligence. There are many other fields: language understanding, lip reading, predicting the activity of potential drug molecules, analyzing data, designing new molecules, playing games, etc., etc. Let me give you just one example of what I mean by image understanding. The old problem of image segmentation has been around for many years. It consists of having an image like the one you see on the screen on the left-hand side, and you want a computer program that is able, by looking at this image, to tell you, well, this is a street. In this street, there are cars, there are parked cars, there are pedestrian walks, there are some pedestrians walking there, and so on and so forth. And so this is what the segmentation is, what is done on the right-hand image. So this was a big challenge. It's largely solved with these methods now. And you see that it is really the prerequisite to understand what is happening in the street. And so it is also the prerequisite in using these new methods in order to have self-driving cars. And really the new algorithm for driving cars or trucks is using this kind of segmentation. And this gives me the opportunity to introduce also the first impact on the society. You may know that there are millions of people who are truck drivers in the US or in Europe, and maybe there will be a very strong evolution of their job if there is a large part of automatization in doing this. Another example of image analysis that I have picked up is in medical applications. There are many of them. Here is a case of skin lesions. You see on the pictures some pictures of epidermal lesions, and you see that there can be epidermal lesions on the top here, which are benign, and others which are malignant. And it turns out that using deep neural networks, pre-trained on very big database, and then trained on more than 100,000 clinical images, both benign and malignant, these colleagues, a couple of years ago, were able to provide a computer program, an artificial neural network, that achieves performance on par with all tested experts, demonstrating an artificial intelligence capable of classifying skin cancer with a level of competence comparable to dermatologists. So this is a huge progress. It can be done remotely from some pictures taken from a smartphone. And you see that in terms of screening and being able to make recommendations to people to go very fast to a dermatologist or to a hospital, this is an important progress. There is much more progress. I was talking about language analysis, the devices that make automatic translations in everyday life are making quite some progress. Here is an example that I have taken from one of the standard translator using this deep neural network. On the left is the first sentence actually of Proust à la recherche du temps perdu. And on the right is the automatic translation into English, which is quite a decent one. Of course, there is a caveat there, and I want to mention it, that if you ask, for instance, what is a good translation of à la recherche du temps perdu? Is it in search of lost time or remembrance of things past? I found these two translations on the web. There is no artificial intelligence which will tell you that, because literary translation is really something which is a creative activity. And so there is a viewpoint taken in each of these two translations. So this is not what I'm talking about when I talk about progress in translation. I'm more talking about progress in everyday life, taxi driving, hotel reservation, and so on and so forth. The last example that I wanted to mention, because it has been advertised a lot, is the games. We have known for many years that a computer can win against chess players. The relatively new performance due to deep networks is a computer that was able to win at the game of Go. It was supposed to be very difficult because the game of Go has a large space of possible move at each step. So you cannot just do it by pure force. The computer power is not enough to do it by pure force. You need strategies. And in 2016, the first program was winning against the world champion. And what is interesting is that in 2016, it was trained by analyzing, storing a lot of human games. But the year after, there was a new version of the program, which was trained without looking at any human games and trained only by doing game against itself, analyzing itself, his own game. And it is the best program at the moment. What are these machines? What are these computer programs I'm talking about? They are just computer programs in which you have an input. It could be an image. It goes through a certain machine, and this machine is represented here. I have represented it with a lot of knobs, and we will see that these are actually finding the right machine is finding the right positions of all these knobs, and then it produces an output. So, for instance, one of the big area in which there was analysis, in which there was progress, was analyzing image, for instance, distinguishing if there is a cat on an image or if there is a dog on an image. This looks simple to us. A baby can do it, but for many years, computer programs were not able to do it. And we were not able to program a computer to do it. And the breakthrough was really using machine learning. In machine learning, the computer, you don't write exactly the program of the computer. You teach the computer how to learn. And the computer learns from examples. So you provide to the computer a large set of images of cats in all kinds of circumstances, a very big one with hundreds of thousands of images of cats. So now you know why people put images of cats on the web. It's just so that the experts will use them in order to train their computer programs. And so the machine will adapt all the knobs until it does a satisfactory answer for all the images in the database, all the images that are presented to it. So there are many, many combinations of all these knobs. It will try them, it is programmed to try them in a smart way until it finds a solution. And the solution performs well on the database. It identifies these as cats, those as dogs. So this is a good machine for the database. Now the big question is, does it generalize? Is it able to predict on a new image of a cat that it has never seen? Does it generalize? And the answer is yes. And this was really a very spectacular outcome of this machine learning. How are these machines built? They are built from artificial neural networks. It's an idea that has been around for 50 years, probably. The idea is to go back to the fact that a small child, a 3 years old child, is perfectly able to identify a cat. And he uses his brain, and in the brain there are neurons. The neurons are cells which are more or less of this shape. There is a body of the neuron. It can send a signal along this part, which is the axon, and this signal will be sent to other neurons through what are called the synapses. In artificial neural network, you have a neuron, this one here. It receives signal from incoming neurons. It does just some superposition of this signal with something which is important is the weight. Maybe this neuron here, it will give a strong weight to the signal coming from that one, a medium weight to this one, a small weight to that one, and maybe a negative weight from this other one. And it will combine all of them, do the sum. And if the sum is large enough, if there is enough signal, he will propagate it to other neurons, like if it had synapses. So the knobs that you have to turn are really these, what we call parameters, which is how to design these weights, the weights that will modulate how you give a weight to the signal that comes from this guy, for instance. Now, in deep networks, you have the artificial neurons are organized in layers. There is an input layer. This could be just the one that looks at the image of the cat, and then a first hidden layer, etc., etc. And in the end, you have the word cat coming up. Here I have drawn to you a very simple image with just 4 layers, but in practice, you can have hundreds of layers. Each of the layers can have thousands of neurons, so I cannot represent it on the screen. It also means that, you know, all these weights I was showing to you before, these are the weights of the signal when they are propagating. There is one weight for each line that is drawn here. In practice, there are millions of these knobs. So you have all these knobs that you have to turn. And when you have millions of knobs, the number of combinations of these million of knobs is extremely large. It's much larger than the number of particles in the universe. And so the big challenge is to find the right combination. And it is really spectacular that by training on huge database, you can find the arrangement of these knobs such that the network performs well. So this has been an enormous progress, thanks to the availability of huge database and the availability of a very big computing power. So here it is. This is a neural network that has been trained. One can see how it elaborates progressively the information. You present images of faces. In the first layer, maybe it will detect some small edges. In the second layer, it will start to detect some eyes, etc. And in the 100th layer, it will be able to detect faces. It elaborates gradually the information. So this is beautiful. It is a really spectacular progress, but I want to mention 3 big problems with this progress. First of all, it needs the availability of a very, very large amount of data. This data must be labeled, must be pre-processed and labeled. It means that now in the world, there are many people who are working on data sets of images and labeling them, saying on this image there is a pizza, on this image there is a car, on this image, etc., etc. So it's a very awkward way of doing it. It's very far from the learning that is taking place by babies. Secondly, there is no understanding. We find the network itself has found the arrangement of the knobs that is successful. We really don't know how it works. And because of that, it's very difficult to guarantee the results. I will come back to it later. And thirdly, there is no general intelligence, there is no representation of the world, and there is no causality. So we are very far from intelligent behavior. Let me mention one problem that we have due to the fact that we have no really good explanation of how it works. This is a case of a network that has been trained to distinguish images from pandas and from gibbons. So it has been trained on large database of images, of photos of pandas and photos of gibbons, and it works well. And you present this picture, it says panda. You present that picture, it says gibbon. Very good. You present this picture here, and it says gibbon. So this is a big mistake, obviously. Obviously, it is a panda. How was this picture generated? Let me tell you. This picture was generated from the one on the left-hand side. This one on the left-hand side, it looks to us exactly the same. The one on the left-hand side, it is a picture of a panda. It is very well identified as a panda. So the program has no problem with that picture. But on this image, a very perverse colleague has been working for a few months in order to devise this other image that is superimposed to the first one with a very small weight, you know, a small addition of something that looks like noise. It produces that other image. To our eye, it is the same. We don't see any difference. But to the computer, that image is fooling the computer, and it is identified as a gibbon. So this is called adversary attack. It is something that is really a problem. For instance, you could imagine having an automatic system, a car driving system, which sees in the street a stop sign. It is well trained for stop sign. And then there is one of our colleagues who devised a small sticker that can be put on the stop sign, and the stop sign will be identified as a green light. That would be, of course, extremely dangerous. And I fear that people will be able to do that. So this, just to summarize, I think that we are facing a very interesting and very fast technological breakthrough. But it has still its defects, the necessity of large database, the fact that we cannot guarantee, and the third fact, which is the fact that there's really no progress in terms of intelligence. There is no progress in terms of representation of the world. Deep networks are machines that solve very specific problems, well posed, with a very simple measure of performance. You can ask what will happen next. I think that from what we have seen in the recent year, we can really see that there will be major technological breakthroughs. There is a global evolution which is taking place extremely fast. And there will be a significant impact on the societies, will transform many jobs. And it is also jobs which maybe, if you compare it to the Industrial Revolution, in which basically in the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century, there were machines that were producing energy and power. So they were substituting the manpower in terms really of strength, of energy. But now it is in terms of intellectual labor. So it is a very different scale. So if one has an optimistic point of view, I am pretty sure there is already, and there will be in practice, a big progress in the diagnosis in medicine, diagnosis of cancer, etc., etc. Much more efficient search in case laws, for instance. Displacement of people can be optimized, displacement of goods along railways, freeway, etc., etc. These machines can help people to have fast access to relevant information. This is already taking place. Customer support can make a big progress. It will be useful. You can develop robots that can make decisions that can help, for instance, elderly people. Identification of pathogens, developments of new drugs, language assistance, and so on and so forth. Now, on the other side, one can also have a more concerned point of view that what is taking place with this technological revolution is what is maybe something spectacular is the pace. It is taking place extremely fast. I told you it started in 2012. It's already there or everywhere in many sectors of the economy. Can our economy adapt to this evolution so quickly at such a pace? This is not so clear. In previous technological revolutions, the society had time to adapt, and you have a sector of jobs that disappears, but a new one that appears. Here it will be more complicated because of this very fast pace. Another point is that it is in essence, very monopolistic activity. I told you that it relies on the availability of big database. So this is something in which very big monopolistic-like companies have really a big advantage. And it asks a lot of questions, the questions of privacy, you can trace people, you can trace their opinions, you can profile them, and you can, in some sense, also use it as a weapon for controlling population, as is being done in some parts of China at the moment. You have big problems of the biases in databases and in the questions that are asked. There are big examples of that, a program that was developed to help a big company to hire people more efficiently by scanning CVs, and people realized that Black women were not present, were never recommended. It turned out that there was a big bias in the database used to train this program, and this bias was that there was no Black woman. So these are very serious issues. I was telling you about robots that can help elderly people. You can simultaneously, you can develop autonomous robots that could make autonomous decisions of killing people. And this is another very serious issue. Development of new chemical weapons is the counterpart of the development of new drugs for medicine. So I will end with just one sentence by George Soros in Davos, January 2019. I want to call attention to the mortal danger facing open societies from the instruments of control that machine learning and artificial intelligence can put in the hands of repressive regimes. So you see there are really optimistic point of view, pessimistic point of view. I think we should keep all of them in mind, and I will be very happy to answer questions at this stage. Thanks a lot.
So, any questions? Yes, please. Would you mind to go to the micro bar here? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the very inspiring talk. At some point you mentioned among the negative sides, lack of attention of the neural network. What do you mean exactly by attention?
This is something that is well known in the, I mean, if you want to compare the way these artificial neural networks are learning, you want to compare it to what, for instance, infants are doing. It is extremely different. Infants are able to focus on their task, and actually they should focus on the task in order to do a correct learning. They also have a capacity to generalize from a very small number of examples. For instance, a young child can infer a rule from 2 or 3 examples of some, this has been shown, for instance, in some games, and you have a hidden rule for the game, you start to play with the child, and after 2, 3, 4 examples of the game, the child infers the simplest possible rule. And if you think about it, it's exactly what is taking place in learning by children. They really do it by assuming the simplest possible rule and then developing the exceptions that exist, of course, in every exam. So I think that these are the focus of attention, the capacity to infer a simple rule, the representation of the world are very important aspects of the human intelligence that is not reproduced at the moment and very far from being reproduced in artificial neural networks. For instance, an artificial neural network is perfectly able to recognize that this object is a mug, very good. It will not know that if I open my hand now, the mug will fall. It does not have this notion of representation of the entity of the object and its position in the world and the gravity and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
Question? Yes, please. Would you mind to reach the micro? Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your beautiful presentation. You are talking about impacts on science and society. I would like to ask you if among the concerns that you list at the end, We could add also my concern, or the concern of some people, that is related to the impact on the individual cognition of humans following our interbreeding, say, with artificial intelligence through our iPhone and all the other systems. There are studies in science showing how the use of Google encourages that we lose information, but you learn more, you get more capabilities connected with you searching for information. And you know that we are all losing memory by storing easily information. So somebody see this as a very positive, because you can free the individual brain from these mundane tasks, and so you can concentrate on important matters. But at the same point, the brain is a very plastic organ, and we are modifying the brain since when we first extended our mind through technology, lithic stone tools, use of fire, then more and more complicated gadgets, and now artificial intelligence and supercomputers. So, but there has been always a positive feedback in general. Somebody has been worried since ancient times about delegating, like when we invented writing and so on our brain. So now that there are really a very disruptive technology that can impact on our brain, and I wonder if we should really think more about this particular new impact.
Thanks a lot. It is a wonderful question, a deep one that would really require a long perspective and a long debate. As you mentioned, the human activity has been really evolving in terms of intellectual activity. We have been gradually using more and more devices that are able to free our brain. If we go to ancient time, before the use of writing, people had to memorize everything. So the whole history was memorized, and it was conveyed. It had some very big impact in the way that you have the text. The texts were appearing as songs or poetry and so on, so that you can memorize them better. Then there came the appearance of the writing, and this you could start to store information in written, and so you could free a little bit your brain and have history. Then if I go a big 2,000 years bridge, I go to the invention of typesetting and so on, and then the libraries. Libraries was a beautiful invention in the sense that it allowed clerks to have access to information in a room, and you could have it at hand. And probably in this perspective, what we are seeing now is a very big evolution, in the sense that now we have everyone has the big world library in his pocket and has access to all that. Each time you do such a thing, you free your brain from some memory task, and you can use the brain for something else. Now the big question is, what is it that you are using the brain for? Is it just that you are losing ability, as you were mentioning? It's certainly true that we have lost the ability of memorizing with respect to generations which were trained to do that strongly. At the same time, we have much more access to many other activities for our brain, and the idea is that it can also free the brain for more creative tasks. Probably it is also fair to say that with the recent evolution, there is a drift in the analysis of what we call an intelligent behavior. Probably 30 years ago, 40 years ago, people would have said being good at chess means that it is an intelligent behavior. Now everybody agrees that it requires to be smart, etc. But probably people will say, oh, it is very, very specific type of intelligence. It does not mean anything in terms of general intelligence. And our definition of intelligence, of human intelligence, and the specificity of human intelligence is drifting, and is drifting towards more and more creative tasks. So I think that it is a very fascinating topic for research. I have no time. I don't want to go more at length in this argument, but I think it's a wonderful topic, and we have to really analyze it deeply and be conscious of that.
I didn't see you. You'll be the next. Sorry. Thank
you. Thank you for your introduction talk. As you have explained, AI is transforming science in a very deep way. Now you're the director of a school that trains scientists. What impact do you see on the way scientists should be trained in the future?
First of all, I think that AI at the moment is transforming science. It is a new device. It is a new device that can be quite helpful. It can be quite helpful at finding new ideas, finding even solving some difficult problems, for instance, in quantum chemistry, in material science. So it is a tool. And I see it really as a tool, as we have seen in science. I am old enough to have witnessed the big impact of the arrival of numerical studies and computer programs. It was a new tool in the end of the 70s, and it has had a very big impact on science. For instance, in my branch of science, which is statistical physics, it has really allowed to do simulations of systems which we didn't know how to do before. And in some sense, with respect to the two pillars of scientific activity that had been there from the 500 or from the 15th century, you could where you have experiment and theory, then you had also simulation that has come in. And now you have this new tool. It goes beyond simulation. It is a tool in which we can use the computer in a smarter way in order to help. And I think that it can really help to do smart theory. It can help to analyze patterns, to find patterns in data, hidden patterns that would not be obvious to see from the eye. So I see, at the moment, I really see it as a tool. This tool is interesting, when certainly as every time there is a new tool in science, you make discoveries, and we have to train the students in order to be able to do that. So I would distinguish the two aspects, which is develop the new tools that is working really in new algorithms for artificial intelligence, which is a very important topic, and all the main institutions, including mine at PSL University, we have developed a whole center for artificial intelligence and data science, of course. But then there is also how it will diffuse in the rest of scientific activity, which is also a very important aspect of the training of scientists at this moment.
So my question is about the development of artificial intelligence. So given the current state of the art, how far do you think that is going to be that artificial intelligence is going to be able to program itself? So I don't know if you can visualize it, but it's like, is it possible that artificial intelligence conceptualized as a network is able to program itself somehow? There is this technical is possible. So this is my question. And if it's not possible, in your opinion, is it going to be possible in the next years?
Well, in some sense, the big progress, the big recent progress of artificial intelligence is through self-programming. I mean, it has been taught to learn. I was talking about these knobs that it has to adapt and to find. It is able to do it by itself from some database. So this is already taking place. The one important message that I want to insist upon is the fact that, in my opinion, in spite of the fact that there has been in the last 10 years this very big progress and very spectacular, and one should really be aware of it, in spite of this, I think we have not made a single step forward in the direction of intelligence that would mimic human intelligence. And the big problem that I was addressing, that I was listing before, the representation of the world, the notion of causality, and so on, they are still to be solved. So, in my opinion, we will have two aspects. There will be three aspects, actually. There is the technological development. You will even be even smarter at analyzing images and so on and so forth. This is on a very good track, and it will certainly move forward very fast. Then there is understanding how they work. This we need a lot of science on the analysis of what is taking place. Why does it work? Can we put guarantees and so on and so forth? This is another one. And then there is the next one, the third aspect, which is extremely important also, which is what are the fundamental changes that have to be made to this paradigm that we have at the moment, which is a paradigm of artificial neural networks in layers and so on. What are the big changes that will allow to make steps towards something which looks more like intelligence with a good representation of the world? When you have an action, it is a cause and there is an effect, and so on and so forth. I think this is the three pillars of the future progress with very distinct timescales.
The questions? I have a digital one from the net. They write to us, to avoid adversary attacks, it's already possible to the algorithms to detect first disturbing noise that you mentioned at a risk and to correct for if before letting determine the results. Example, the panda versus the gibbon task.
Yes, absolutely. There is a race. It's an interesting race. There is a race between teams, between the one who want to attack a program and the program that defends itself by identifying the specific pattern. And it is true that each time there is an attack, there is a way to try to defend from this attack. The issue that I want to raise is really the fact that the spectrum of all possible attack is very broad. It's very difficult to know in advance what will happen. And I think that as long as we have no capacity of guarantee, it will be an important issue for the technological application. To be sure, I mean to have enough reaction capacity in order that when there is a new attack, to be able to provide the anti-attack. Like it's the same thing that we have seen in computers. You have people who are doing viruses and other antiviruses, and so there will be a new field around that, certainly. But I think it is an obstacle that has to be kept in mind.
Thank you. So, we are at the end of the session. I would like to thank you everybody to be here. And thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mr. Rufo, to be there. And I wish you to have a nice Sunday and enjoy ESOF.
Thank you very much.